Good morning to everyone, and maybe nice to start by expressing my appreciation, my anumodana for the very warm and caring welcome and how everyone is looking after me here, making me feel very comfortable and welcome, much appreciated. And even more so my anumodana for the strong interest in the Dhamma. We had a one-day meditation retreat, well attended yesterday, and it's good to see that many are sacrificing their beauty sleep to come out early in the morning on the weekend when you normally can sleep in, to rather beautify the mind. One thing which is quite striking to me, all these Buddhist monasteries, I had an opportunity before here, I visited Wat Banana Chart, and before that I stayed with Luang Por Tongdeng at Doi Pajau Don Luang near Chiang Mai. And wherever you go, all these Buddhist monasteries are very neat, isn't it? Same here, and our caretaker is very diligent. Every morning a wet wipe of all the areas, the rooms I've been in, and I came in very beautifully clean. And this is a real characteristic of Buddhist monasteries. It's a characteristic of all the great teachers I've ever encountered or heard of. Have you ever heard of a great Buddhist meditation master who was sloppy, grubby, his kuti unclean? No, I never have heard of that as well. It's very noticeable, that cleanliness, neatness, orderliness is a classic and expression of our Buddhist practice. But it takes a lot of effort to keep things clean, isn't it? It's actually amazing in this human world how much time and energy we have to spend to keep our house clean, to keep our body clean, to keep our clothes clean, to keep the dishes clean, to keep everything clean. What's your estimate? How much time do you spend a day with various cleaning work? That means showering and bathing, that means washing your hands, that means doing your laundry, including later drying it, that means doing the dishes, that means vacuuming, doing the surfaces. What's a rough guess? How many hours a day do you spend cleaning things? Just very rough. No one's got even an idea, yeah? 3 hours, 4 hours, you say? 8 hours. Oh, this is a way. 8 hours a day with cleaning work. Another question, what do you think, according to the teaching of the Buddha, of these two things, which one is more important? The body or the mind? The mind. Oh, now I've got you tricked before you noticed it. Because we have established consensus that people usually spend 3, 4, maybe even 8 hours every day cleaning material things. And no one objected to that. And then you also agreed, everyone was saying of these two things, the body and the mind is much more important. So the inference I'm drawing from that now, if you're spending 3, 4 hours every day cleaning material things, but the mind is so much more important, that you would be spending at least twice as much time every day in cleaning the mind. Is that a valid inference? Yeah, no? It's more important. And so if we spend so much time the cleaning stuff connected with the body, because all this cleaning work is usually connected with the body. It's actually the body which makes it all dirty. If you seal your house tightly and no one lives in there, there's not much cleaning work. It is that we have to do laundry because the clean cloth and the new stuff you buy from the shops has to be cleaned after being in contact with the body. All the dishes after eating, then you have to clean up. It's actually also a very valuable reflection to notice how the human body is a source of so much uncleanliness and soiling things. But the more important one is the mind. And if we spend time on cleaning material things, we should make an even bigger effort in cleaning our mind. And sure enough, this is what the Buddha recommended, and this one aspect of the whole path. In fact, you can express the whole practice we are doing in terms of purification. Now, the very famous commentary in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, but also synonyms the Buddha has given for Nibbana, the ultimate aim, what we are going for, the state of complete freedom, Nibbana. We can also describe that as a state of complete purity of the heart. And once we have truly cleansed our heart, once we have removed all impurities, now that is enlightenment, that is freedom, that is the end of suffering. Now that is Nibbana that we are all aspiring to. Like cleaning up the mind, purifying it until even the most subtle and the deepest impurities are completely removed. How would you feel if you can't bathe for a whole week and you can't wash your clothes for a whole week? And then you have to go out, attending a dinner, going to a party, some event. How would you feel? Pretty embarrassed, awkward. But amazingly, how about the mind? We carry our mind everywhere, and we're attending, we come with our mind. And curiously, we don't have the same sense of shame and conscience regarding our mind. And as you heard agreed, the mind is much more important than the body. So if we take that serious, it means that we should have a much stronger sense of shame regarding an unclean mind. I mean, one difference here is that the body for normal human beings is much more visible or even smellable. If the body is unclean, other human beings tend to notice it. Now, the mind is more subtle, and we may be able, or we may think that we are able to hide the unclean nature of our mind to other humans. And to some extent, one can do that. That is why people are much more concerned about their external appearance. However, we have to be aware that there are practitioners, the great meditation masters, Kuba Ajahns, who can actually directly look into our mind. So it's a good reflection. And what would you want them to see there? Should we not make that effort when we are in contact with great meditation masters, that we present with a clean mind? But even more so for devas and even the spirits, doesn't have to be a high deva, it's quite normal for them to operate with mind reading. So very often devas and spirits are actually aware of our mind state and of what we are thinking. It's a advice that the Buddha actually gave himself. We should keep that in mind, that devas see what we are thinking. It's amazing. We sometimes claim that it's only thoughts, doesn't really matter so much. But there are beings who can be aware of our thoughts and our mental impurities or purity. A very pure person, just like when you see someone who is well-dressed, well-groomed, and they're kind of shining, so to speak, in their beauty and cleanliness. For beings with the divine eyesight, with that psychic powers, or spirits where that is just quite normal, they can see a person who has got a high mental purity and has a bright light that's immediately apparent to them. And they're literally shining, bright and radiant, and they can see that. And when the absolute final purification of the mind occurs, when someone attains Nibbana, there's actually this big light going through the whole universe. This is how the Devas always know. There's a light which will outshine even the most powerful Devas and Brahmas, which will outshine even suns, which are much bigger in other galaxies or other solar systems, much bigger suns than ours here in our solar system. But the light that radiates through the universe, if someone attains Nibbana, is even more supreme. Then all the Devas know, and they come and they worship. And so purity is literally shining brightness. So it's good to develop a strong sense of shame and conscience regarding our mental impurity or our mental cleanliness. Of course, the physical impurities, again, are more easily visible. This is why we usually make more effort there, although we know the mind is more important. So what are the impurities in the mind? We all know what kind of dirt and grime and grub constitutes material garbage and pollution, but what is the impurities in the mind? Greed, hatred, delusion, exactly, the roots of the unwholesome. That's a good answer. Basically all the defilements. You could also say craving, tanha. You could say avijja, ignorance, delusion, knowing wrongly. You could say jealousy, stinginess, conceit, arrogance, laziness, and so on. The whole array of defilements, that is what pollutes and makes our mind impure. You probably all have some idea how to clean up your body and your home. The different cleaning agents, mopping, scrubbing, sponge, and so on. So how do we clean and purify our mind? The Buddha have given us the equipment. The one thing I noticed, if you want to do a good cleaning job, can you do it if you don't have decent cleaning equipment? If you only have got a rotten, moldy, old wiping cloth, can you get the place really clean with that one? That's spreading bacteria. Actually, studies have shown, do you know what is often the most bacteria in the whole home? It's not the toilet. It's often the sponge in the kitchen. Because that wet sponge, that can be a real breeding place for bacteria. Whereas if you use one of these strong toilet cleaner, the toilet is almost aseptic after that. But the sponge, often people don't consider that. And so we need good cleaning equipment to do a good cleaning job. And fortunately, the Buddha has given us that equipment and also the instructions. If you have high-tech cleaning equipment, it can be useful to read the instructions, and it gives a good result. And the very first thing how we can start the practice of cleaning up the mind, it's a gradual thing. It's just like if you had a big party at your home and it was really wild and the whole place is in a really messed up big style, you wouldn't start with some subtle dust wiping. You may have to first get the broom or even the shovel and get the coarse garbage out, collect that, and then you have to maybe boom and vacuum, and after that you can do the polishing. And it's quite similar with the mind. And one very simple, basic practice for purifying the mind is generosity, what we call dana, giving. That purifies, or that has an effect in helping to start cleaning out egotism, cleaning out stinginess, cleaning out this material greed. Because any act of giving to others, any act of sharing, is obviously going against the tendency of desire, of craving, of wanting. Because usually we want stuff for ourselves, and this is typically craving. Now, I want that for me, ownership, grasping, holding on, possessions. And a simple way to directly address that, very practically, not in a philosophizing and thinking and maybe proliferating about not self and what does not self exactly mean and how does it work. A very simple act of practicing not self, giving away some of the money on your bank account in an act of generosity to other people who may be really in need. Some material possession you have, giving that away to others. That's the very first step in the practice. And you can actually see that you feel kind of more pure when you give. I can feel that just getting things, and it gives us a certain form of happiness to receive something. Retail therapy, as I say, it can feel nice if you go shopping and you have all the packs, you carry that home. But if you investigate the happiness and the feeling of satisfaction when we do acts of charity and we give things away, it's much more gratifying, it's actually more deep. And it's also an act of making our mind more pure, and we can sense that. We can feel that our mind is on a higher level, on a purer level, and after an act of sacrifice. Actually, when we saw Luang Por Liam, whenever I'm in Wat Banana-chat or visiting Wat Nong Papong, I always try to meet Luang Por Liam, the successor of Ajahn Chah, the Abbot of Wat Nong Papong. He has been 4 times at Dhammagiri as well. And I always find it so inspiring to be in the presence of someone with a very, very pure mind. And one advice he gave is the practice of sacrifice. Interesting, Ajahn Viradhammo, Ajahn V. I think, did you have him here recently? Yeah, I think he visited. One of the most senior Western disciples of Ajahn Chah. At one of our Sangha meetings, the question was raised, what does it mean to you in the Ajahn Chah tradition? How would you describe the Ajahn Chah style of training? And then all the very senior monks who had personal contact with Ajahn Chah were asked to comment on that. And Ajahn V just said only one word: sacrifice. Because it's not the only thing we practice, but it's quite powerful. There's a sacrifice, and there's a real act of dana. I mean, that is a sacrifice at least, as Ajahn V meant it, as Luang Por Liam, Ajahn Chah were teaching it. There's a Dhamma sacrifice, a sacrifice of giving, of generosity, of putting one's own desires and craving behind and putting in front the needs of others, the needs of the Sangha, the maintaining the organization, the community, and the infrastructure that has practiced and taught the Dhamma for 2,500 years. And it's important to do that again and again. Because if we haven't fully purified our mind yet, if we haven't attained any of the stages of enlightenment, which means, even on the first level of stream entry, it means that a certain minimum level of cleanliness will always be maintained. The stream entry cannot drop into coarse impurities of the mind anymore. That is cleaned out forever, so to speak. And that is one beautiful thing about Dhamma practice, because you may have noticed, do you ever get finished with your cleaning jobs? It's impossible, because it always gets dirty again. And when you've finished the dishes, then you may have to do the laundry, and when the laundry is done, then you have to do the vacuum, and then back to the dishes. And then you need a shower, because now you're sweating from all the work. And unfortunately, this will continue forever. You cannot get this human body ever clean. It's impossible for a human body. However, with the mind, this is so beautiful, and you can actually get it clean. And once a person has realized Nibbana, attained some Bodhi, the mind has total purity and no dirt can ever stick again. Now, that is a simile of the lotus. This is why the lotus is such a powerful Buddhist symbol. Yeah, got any? Okay, this Buddha doesn't sit on a lotus. Often they sit. Anyway, you all have seen lotuses, they grow naturally in Malaysia. And have you ever put water on a lotus leaf? You have to really try, and it's fascinating. It forms this completely round, spherical bubble, and it completely rolls off. The lotus leaf, and it doesn't get wet at all. Nothing can soil that. And that's a symbol of the purity we are aspiring to. It's also amazing, a lotus can grow even in a kind of dirty pond or just a ditch. But even if it goes in a dirty ditch, the lotus is beautiful, white and pure, and has a beautiful fragrance. Now, this is a symbol for this act of purification in our Dhamma practice, growing out of the impurities of the world. Even though we are in an impure body, we can actually purify the mind until the mind is totally clean. Just like the lotus can go into in a muddy pond and come out beautiful and clean. So that is fantastic. This is one of the differences. The Dhamma practice really has an end. This is as it says in the suttas, when the great Arahants attained what the Buddha said himself, Katang Karaniyang, the job is finally done. You can reach an end there. It's not like this cleaning work which continues forever. It can be fully purified and remain pure forever then. So we start by giving, to clean out the coarse manifestation from egotism, greed, stinginess, avariciousness, and so on. However, if you haven't reached any of the stages of enlightenment yet, it means that the impurity starts sneaking back in. And the desire to get stuff for ourselves, and it can easily come up all the time again. So it's important, just like you are doing your cleaning jobs regularly. Now, you wouldn't say, I have cleaned this shirt already last year, no need to wash it again. No one would say that, isn't it? So similar, you can't say, no, I already offered some meal to the monastery last year. This is good enough now. The act of dana, of generosity, ideally daily, there's some little act every single day, or even several times a day, just like we are cleaning impurities which sneak back in every day in our house, our body. So we are continuing the act of dana, of giving, because the egotism, greed, and so on can easily come back into the mind if we haven't attained these stages of enlightenment yet. A next one, really important, is the practice of sila, the precepts, keeping the precepts. Now, this is very powerful because this is not just cleaning, this is preventing that stuff gets dirty in the first place. I remember living with Ajahn Kemanando. He's quite famous now for being very, very clean, very neat. And I remember he always used to say, conscientious usage reduces cleaning work. And I can see that in some people, the way they are using a kitchen is a complete mess afterwards, and you have to clean a long time. Whereas other people, they are very conscientious, and they just don't create much mess, and they don't create much dirt around them. Because that is always easier if it's not so dirty in the beginning. And the precepts, they protect us from really severe pollution of the mind. Killing, for example, this is really powerful. This is a very deep impurity, and it's very hard work to get that out later again. Stealing, being unfaithful to the spouse or to the partner. You've seen how much pain and problems that is creating. Lying and alcohol intoxicants. Drugs that cause intoxication, alcohol that causes you to lose mindfulness, and in particular to lose your sense of shame and conscience. The harmful effect of alcohol is also noticeable in terms of cleanliness. Are alcoholics known to be particular neat and clean people? No. Because the moment when you are under the influence of alcohol, you don't mind anymore if it's dirty. This is why in homeless camps, when people often have drug problems, it's often very dirty. You don't mind if you're intoxicated. This is one thing how you can see how harmful alcohol is and the effects. So the idea with the precepts is to, first of all, even preventing that the very bad impurities get into the mind. Because otherwise the cleaning work will never achieve anything. Now, if you have kids, and maybe they share a room, can you get that room really clean while the kids are playing in that room? Not really, and you have to get them out and then get it all clean. Because if people are already wasting it again while you're working, it never gets clean. It's quite similar. And even if you try to practice meditation, practice the Dhamma and study the suttas, but at the same time you're killing, stealing, adultering, lying and getting sloshed, it will not go anywhere. It's a little bit like you're cleaning your house, and once it's completely spick and span, you invite a biker gang, Hells Angel, to throw a big party in your home with 100 people. Now afterwards, you have to clean a long, long time to ever get back to a good state of cleanliness. So similar, if we try to purify our mind on the subtle level with meditation, but we are committing the serious breaches of the 5 precepts, it's just not very effective. You spend years later trying to purify the mind from that. It's so much more effective to keep the 5 precepts very pure, and this kind of garbage doesn't come into the mind. This is one reason that we can increase the level of purity further by occasionally practicing 8 precepts. Now, this is a more subtle form of pollution. What is a more subtle form of pollution that the 8 precepts try to prevent? Why not eating in the evening? It's not really evil to eat some nice dinner. Why not putting up some nice makeup that you're looking beautiful? Why not listening to some nice music? There's nothing evil in that. So why did the Buddha recommend that? What is the cleaning effect. What is the 8 precepts? Keeping the 8 precepts, what is that cleansing your mind from? Sensuality, exactly. The sensual desire. And we have to be aware, and it's important to understand that this is actually an impurity. It may not feel like it, but this is one major impurity that ties us into samsara. And wanting to eat a nice meal, wanting to enjoy beautiful music and dance and party and so on. Although not evil, and that's one reason that we end up being reborn. This is that cause that we are in such an impure body. And we talked about how the human body is the source of so much impurity. This is why you have to clean so much. So why does your mind, after you die and your mind gets separated from the body, why does your mind take up something so impure, so disgusting? Have you ever watched on YouTube the surgery videos? What the body actually looks like? Now, the Buddha has given these cemetery contemplations because those days they didn't have YouTube and they didn't have that kind of surgery. And one way you could see what happens to a human body is on a charnel ground. They would just dump the body and have it lying there, and then you could watch it. But nowadays, it's actually much easier, because all these cosmetic surgeons and so on, they put out their surgery videos on YouTube, and there's an advertisement for them, and you can watch a facelift. I can really recommend them. They're live, they did record it live, but it's available afterwards, and you can see what the face looks like once you look under the skin. It's fascinating. For a facelift, they're usually cutting here, along the ear. And then you pull up the skin, and then have this little thing, it's like a tiny vacuum cleaner. And then they're sucking out the fat. Get these slurping sounds when they're going underneath. And then they're just pulling it. It's just like when you have a sock or something, you pull it tight. And you can see that, they show that on video, when I pull here, and then it looks younger. And after they pulled it all up, and then it gets stitched back up. I can really recommend it. The tummy tuck, nose job, even the most beautiful nose, once you cut that open, no longer so beautiful. This is the real nature of the human body. And although you clean your body and shower and so on, how do you clean that stuff inside? Impossible. It's fascinating on these videos, just when they do the cut, the initial cut, the scalpel, and you see immediately impurity coming. First cutting through this yellow fat, doesn't look nice, right under the skin, the subcutaneous fat layer, and then cutting deeper, and then comes the blood. Do you like seeing blood? Is that beautiful? Every human being has, I think, about 5 liters of blood or more. So with these kind of people, and just imagine you substitute each person sitting here, we put a bucket with 5 liters of blood in that place. You probably wouldn't even want to come in here. But here we are, there's so much blood in this room. So I can really recommend that. It's an excellent way of contemplating the impure nature of the body. And why does your mind take up something so disgusting? And when you watch that, all the big operations, they also have open heart surgery, big cancer operation, you can see that all. And this is a real life human body, it's not even a corpse, it's a living human body. So why does your mind take this disgusting thing? Why is it so attached to that? Because the body is a vehicle that you can enjoy, touch, that you can see beautiful things, that you can eat nice food, that you can experience a pleasant sensation with the body. This is what the body is all about. It's basically a vehicle that you can enjoy the 5 senses. So the 8 precepts, they are designed that we weaken sensuality, that we start cleaning out some of these impurity of sensual desire. So it's good to keep them. Ideally, the Buddha recommended about once a week for the 4 moon phases, which is about once a week. So once we practice dana and sila, we have a good basis. There's already some basic purity well established. You continue doing dana again and again to counter the selfishness and greed and stinginess sneaking in again and again. You keep the precepts to prevent any major pollution from happening. And now is a good time to go for the more refined purification, and that is bhavana, meditation, the samadhi, the citta parisuddhi, the purifying the mind. And that starts by purifying the thinking. That whenever there's an angry thought, we have to recognize it, and that's an impurity in our mind. And just like when you notice that you have some dirt on your hands, or you've touched something smelly and now your hand is a bad smell and you immediately want to wash it, isn't it? So similar, we should have that same kind of instinctive response when we have angry thoughts, when we have thoughts of cruelty, when we have thoughts of sensual desire. We should have the same response, like washing our hands when it's smelly, when we touch something bad. So we should have the same response, wanting to purify the mind from these bad thoughts by bringing up the opposite. The best way of cleaning anger, cleansing the mind from anger, is metta, loving kindness. It's the most powerful cleaning agent. And nothing is so powerful against anger as loving kindness. What is a good cleaning agent against sensual desire? You have to know what is a right cleaning agent. Do you wash your hands with toothpaste? Or do you brush your teeth with soap? No, we have to use a right cleaning agent. You wouldn't want to use a toilet cleaner for toothbrushing. No? And then later you complain, this is a bad toilet cleaner. It tastes awful. So sometimes people, they use the Buddha's teaching in an unskillful way, and then they complain it doesn't work. It's the same like using the toilet cleaner for your teeth and then complaining it's not nice. So what is a good cleaning agent against the sensual desire? Actually, I just talked about it. Look at the YouTube videos from the surgery. You will notice there's not much sensual desire. Because sometimes it's really amazing. There's sometimes quite very young girls and really pretty girls, but they somehow think their nose is wrong. And then they get the surgery, and the surgeon puts it on YouTube. I guess they'd probably get a price reduction or something. And even this very pretty face from an attractive young girl, and once, even just the nose, once this is all open, you see the bone, you see the cartilage, and then they have this little hammer and chisel. You know hammer and chisel? Just a mini. And then he's smashing in the bones here. Crush, and then modeling it. And even this very pretty face, the beauty is gone. With this open nose and the blood, and very powerful. What is a cleaning agent against jealousy, envy? Someone else gets a promotion, not you. Someone else can afford the big new car, not you. Someone else is much more popular. Someone else Insta 50,000 followers, your Insta 50 followers. Jealousy. You know that emotion? What is the cleaning agent against that? Mudita, sympathetic joy, the rejoicing in others' wholesome accomplishment. Negligence, heedlessness, just being lazy. I don't care, take it easy. What is a cleaning agent against that? For example, contemplation of death. Now, this gives you some sense of urgency. By the way, talking about contemplation of death, I noticed that people are sometimes still very scared of corona. And they say, I think some people say there are more corona cases coming up again. And by now it's not so much in the news anymore, but so many people got really panicky when they were publishing every day the people who died from corona. But what is your guess how many people die every day? Does anyone know? Because the funny thing is, before corona, no one would publish that kind of thing. But it's not like people started dying only with the coronavirus. No? People have been dying as long as there have been human beings. It's a natural thing for human beings to die. And it's about 150,000 every single day worldwide. So please keep that in mind if you get scared again, if you see, 100 people died from corona. Even before corona, a just very rough figure, of course it varies day by day, something like 150,000 people dying every day. And as a monk, doing these reflections already already years ago, I looked at these figures, and of course I was much less scared then. I didn't panic, because you have already done Maranussati. It also means if you contemplate death, that you can cope better when relatives die, when you lose loved ones, because you have already faced the reality of death in your contemplation. So once our thinking has become very pure, that is a time where we can really develop wisdom now, insight. And as long as our thinking is mostly impure, you will notice that you can't really get the very deep meditation and the very deep insight. We need a certain basis of samadhi, not only in the sense, sometimes people just describe that as you must have jhana. Samadhi means that your process of mental purification is quite advanced, and that means that your thinking is very pure. So for example, if you look at it, what you are thinking throughout the day, what is the percentage of unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, connected with anger, connected with envy, connected with egotism, and what is the percentage of really good thoughts, loving kindness, compassion, gratitude, respect, faith. This percentage has to improve. That is part of the practice of samadhi. That is a result of samadhi. This is about also the practice of deepening samadhi. And if 90% of our thoughts are just distracted thoughts and unwholesome ones, and only 10% are really good, you will find it very difficult to get into really deep meditation. But once a person has samadhi, that means that their thinking is usually all very wholesome. You cannot think unwholesome stuff all day and then think when you then do an hour meditation in the evening that you can attain jhana. That doesn't usually work. You must already be thinking mostly wholesome. And then there's a level of purity that one can now go in and use wisdom and insight to take out the really deep roots of impurity, what you mentioned in the beginning, greed, hatred, delusion. Things like tanha, craving, The power of wisdom, of truly seeing the impermanence, of truly understanding the non-self nature of all conditioned phenomena, of seeing the Four Noble Truths, that craving is actually the source of our suffering, the craving in my heart, not the neighbors or the mother-in-law or the boss or anything out there, but the craving in my own heart. This is what causes suffering. This is what ultimately causes us to be immured in sickness, old age, death, and new rebirth, and contemplating dependent origination, contemplating the three characteristics. That whatever is put together has to fall apart again. This body is put together. This is why you already need the mother and father, and then you need food, because the body is a process of putting things together, constructed. That's the root meaning of sankhara. The sang in Pali is together, and karoti is to make, to do, to put things together. Whatever is put together will fall apart. And whatever is created by conditions will cease when the conditions are exhausted. It's the same with the body, it's the same with feelings, emotions. You cannot expect that to last because it is based on conditions. Now this is what the mind has to see. A very pure mind in a very quiet state. And when the insight is clear enough and it goes deep enough, and then it can take out the impurities completely. And then they are removed forever. And you have that freedom of the Arahant. You don't have any cleaning job left. It's all clean and it stays clean. Isn't that inspiring? So let us all go for that. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Venerable Ajahn, for your insightful Dhamma teachings. The floor is now open for questions.
Please, yeah.
Yes.
Venerable Sir, I think the root cause of a lot of problems is really the word tanha, craving. But there is also a Buddhist word called chanda. So what's the subtle difference between tanha and chanda?
Yeah, very good
how
question.
do we practice that? Yeah.
Very good question. This is a nice thing about this. In Pali we have a word, so to speak, for positive desire. In the Iddhipada, for example, chanda is a positive desire, because you have to start somewhere. And as Venerable Ananda at once expressed it, you have to overcome tanha by means of tanha. That is actually possible. So if you have the desire to be a good person and to keep precepts, that's obviously also a desire. But this is a good desire. You should have that desire, because how else do you get your practice going? And you need to have a strong desire to really keep your precepts pure when the temptations come up. And this is what the Buddha expresses with the term chanda in a positive sense. So it's very important to understand that you cannot immediately say, okay, I let go of all desire completely. At some stage, very advanced, for example, for an anagami, the third stage of enlightenment, these things can become an obstruction. And for the last step of purification, the desire to purify is actually then an obstruction. But unless one is already at this super refined high level of the path, we need some desire to do the practice. And you need wisdom to distinguish the bad and the good one. Sometimes the Buddha's teaching in the Buddhist history was also called vibhajjavada, clearly distinguishing, and the analytic teaching is somewhat similar with pleasant feeling. one particular feature of the Buddha was that he wouldn't reject all pleasant feeling, but he would reject only the worldly, fleshly, sensual pleasant feeling. But the pleasant feeling you get from being generous or from practicing samadhi, the happiness you get from being a good person who keeps precepts, that is a happiness you should develop. Except again, at a very high stage of the path, you have to let go of that attachment. But in the beginning, that's something you deliberately develop. Yeah. So very important to see that distinction and to understand that. And you should develop the wholesome desire. That is one which actively has to be developed.
Venerable Ajahn, thank you very much for your compassionate teaching. I have a very practical question about sensual desire. And now I'm doing some renovation for my house because things over the years it gets moldy and not hygienic. So that part is not a problem from my Buddhist perspective, removing all this and throwing them away. But then when trying to put in the new things, there's this huge desire, oh, I want this nice kitchen sink and I want this, nice cabinet. And so the whole process of designing the renovation is a process of sensual desire. So it's like, how does one do practical things like this, and in which is necessary in a way, and yet do it with wisdom and without going overboard on our sensual desires?
Yeah, another very good question. What I recommend if you kind of really renovate, redesign your house, or when you move house, is actually a great opportunity in cleaning things out and giving up stuff. I wouldn't see it so negative. There's a great opportunity for getting rid of things. Regarding the design, the very first thing in your design should be your shrine. Your main shrine where you have your main Buddha Rupa in your house. This is how you start. And it's the same thing in your life. You have to get the Buddha in first. For many people, there is their job, then there is their family, the partner, then the social obligations, and then somehow we have to squeeze in the Dhamma practice as well. But by then it's difficult. That has to come in first. So I would recommend you, when you are thinking about your newly renovated house, have a really good place for the shrine. If you can manage, the best is obviously having a dedicated room. But of course, if someone only has a flat or something, an apartment, that may be difficult. But then at least you want to have a nice shrine in a very suitable location. And from that, a lot will already follow. For example, in this Dhamma hall, unfortunately, I'm more familiar with monastic design. I'm not so much in how to design a lay living space. But once you put the Buddha Rupa there, a lot of the rest kind of follows naturally, where the monks are sitting according to seniority. So once the Buddha is in, the rest will fall into place, so to speak. So first comment, put the Buddha in first. Don't design your home and then afterwards you try to find a place for the Buddha. Many people do it like that. The next thing, I wouldn't worry about having a really good kitchen sink. And I made an effort, even when we had some renovation at Dhammagiri. We have a very expensive kind of tap, this really good one with this kind of spiral where you can really move it easily and you can pull it out, because that is part of the cleaning job. So I don't think it's a great defilement if you want to have a really good kitchen sink that you can really clean well. I think this is almost more like part of wanting to be clean. I don't think the defilement will manifest so much in designing your house in a way that it can be cleaned very well. However, once it comes to all the cabinets, I think this is where there's a great chance. Now, how many cabinets do you really need? I once read a simple introduction into Feng Shui. I don't have much knowledge with that, but some of the basic principles I really liked, and they really struck me as very in line with Dhamma. And he recommended in that book, everything that you don't use every day should be nicely put away in some cabinet, or should have its place in the way it lives. It should not just be lying around. If you use it every day, and it may be in a place because you constantly use it, but if you don't use it every day and have it in a nice place, nicely put away appropriately, that it's not cluttering up the place, avoid clutter. If you don't use it once a year, throw it away, you don't need it. And I think that's very true. Anything that you don't use even once a year, it shows that you don't need it. And then don't have it cluttering your place. Cluttering means even nicely put away. It's still a burden. Even if you have got these perfect cabinets and it's all stuffed in there, it's a burden on your mind. This is a great chance when you move or renovate. What can you chuck out? And when you see something, don't go so much by, oh, I like it so much. Ask yourself, now, when did I use it the last time? If you didn't use it, now get rid of it. Because all these things now are subconscious burdens on our mind, the possessions. Another thing is, don't store stuff under your bed. It's a huge burden. That should be a free space. Also not behind the Buddha statues, not a place to clutter up there. And generally avoiding clutter. Also don't store poison. Don't store poison in your kitchen so much. The kitchen is a hearth in a way where you prepare the food for the whole family. And it's amazing that the most poison in many homes is actually stored right where they prepare the food. It's not the place where you want to put poison. Certain stuff is poisonous, even insecticides and so on. Insecticides you wouldn't want to use anyhow for the first precepts. So I would rather look at it as a great opportunity. And you're living in lay life, and so you will need certain possessions. And even monks. Now, I also own a bowl. I even own a relatively expensive phone and a tablet. And so nowadays, you in lay life, you obviously need certain things. It's two different practices. The Buddha called that some things you have to abandon while using them. For monks, that is the 4 requisites. And then you have to use it very wisely and reflecting on them. That although you are having them and you're using them, you're not attached to them. It's quite difficult to do. Other stuff, you can just chuck out completely. That is the easier one. But obviously, if you live in lay life, you will need things. You also have a certain social life. You may need some nice dishes and cutlery for receiving guests or for major events. But try to reflect about them, that you're not having them just as a hoarded treasure, but just more like for their practical use. Yeah. If you look at the things which you want to put in all these cabinets now, and ask yourself, why do I have that? Is that something one needs or the family needs and something that isn't useful? Or is it only something I'm attached to? And one can be attached to all kinds of stuff which have no real use. And if that stuff, if you can chuck it out or give it away, make it as a gift. Yeah.
There's the other thing about to what extent you spend on the renovation. For example, if you look at this Buddha Chetya Hall, it's so beautiful. But anything that's really beautiful costs a lot of money. So it becomes like a question of, is it wise spending? Should the money be spent, in better, more beneficial ways from the Buddhist point of view? Or should we, that lounge set is so beautiful, there's a cheaper one, but this is definitely beautiful. So it's like, how do we moderate? This is all desire, isn't it? It's all sensual desire to speaking. So yeah, then, hope Ajahn can give a bit of sorry about this.
I think you will have to use your own wisdom there. Ne? Use your wisdom, and I agree. If you spend stuff on very expensive furniture, I would agree that the money can be used more beneficially. It may be beautiful, but are you making heaps of punya by having a super expensive, beautiful furniture? Is this what the Buddha said generates lots of punya, lots of good karma? I don't think so. Ne? On the other hand, the Buddha also advised in lay life, it's not like you have to be a total ascetic and give everything away to the Sangha. It's fair enough if you are working hard and earning your money in a righteous way with a profession which is right livelihood. It's also fair enough that you want to use it to some extent to make yourself happy and make your family happy. And I must say, in our modern world, there's so much ugliness. Modern architecture is just so unbelievably ugly usually. And even a lot of modern furniture I find amazingly ugly. And often nowadays I find that even the expensive stuff is not necessarily particularly beautiful. Recently I had to get some reading glasses. And I was amazed. I went to one website, I think that was more like designer glasses, and they had literally hundreds of different glasses. And they would all cost at least 200 Aussie dollars. But the sky is the limit. You can buy for almost any price. And then I looked at Amazon and some cheapo online stuff, and some of the stuff where you get 4 glasses for $40. To my mind, they actually look better than the $400 designer glasses, reading glasses. So I don't think that it's always expensive stuff is necessarily that much more beautiful. And sometimes you can find something that is simple and practical, and if it's really simple and practical, it often has already some natural beauty. And once it becomes very expensive, it's often unnecessarily ornamental and overloaded and so on, in my opinion. But I think it's not wrong to have your home a little bit beautiful. I think beauty can inspire our mind to higher ideals. And you could also talk about the Buddhist path as beautifying the mind. Today I talked about purifying the mind, but you can also talk about beautifying the mind. And even the Buddha had an appreciation of beauty. Even an ascetic like Venerable Kassapa had a great appreciation of the beauty of nature. And he composed some very beautiful verses. So the sense of beauty is not even gone in an arahant. Even they can appreciate beauty. So I wouldn't necessarily eliminate all beauty in your home. I think that would be not nice. And admittedly, sometimes I know myself that sometimes the beautiful stuff is a little bit more expensive. So the point is more like striking the right balance there. But I'm sure there's some stuff where you can easily say, I chuck out a few more things which have no use and I'm just attached to them, and I free myself from that attachment, that burden. And then I need a little less furniture, and then I can use that money for something which is much more good karma. But you don't have to live like Venerable Kassapa as a super ascetic monk. I don't think that is, you don't have to aspire to that if you're in lay life. And to have a beautiful home where the family is happy, I think there's also an important part of lay practice. Yeah. I really like the traditional Chinese beauty. When we have some of these beautiful like Song dynasty painting of mountains, or Chinese calligraphy, and some of that can even be Dhamma related, or beautiful Kuan Yin, a beautiful Buddha statue. And I don't think the beauty and Dhamma is always a contradiction, and sometimes you can put beauty into the service of Dhamma. And I don't think you have to be stingy on the shrine. The shrine should be the most beautiful again. if you're talking about beautiful and having a really expensive piece of furniture, and for the shrine, I wouldn't be stingy. I get some really beautiful wood, tropical hardwood, or some really good wood, and beautifully done. And the less you have in your home, the less you have to clean. If you have got all this beautiful knick-knack all over your shelves and so on, do you know how much work that is, dusting that?
Once again, thank you, Venerable Ajahn, for the insightful reflections on purification of the mind in Dharma practice. So, brothers and sisters, let us show our gratitude and appreciation to Venerable Ajahn by saying sadhu, sadhu 3 times. Sadhu.